Panic attacks. I'm sure you must have heard of this term very frequently. What are panic attacks? What are its signs and symptoms? How can you deal with it if you have it? To talk about all this, we have with us today Ms. Smriti Suresh. Smriti is a counseling psychologist. She is also queer affirmative and trauma informed in her approach. Let us welcome her on our show today. Hi Smriti, welcome.
Hi.
So panic attacks are something which have been very less known because the symptoms of it is very similar to that of a heart attack. So many people think they're having a heart attack when in reality that might be a panic attack. So could you tell us what panic attacks are?
So what panic attacks are this sudden, very intense burst of anxiety, right? So when this burst of anxiety hits you, it causes firstly psychological symptoms. That is this immense feeling of dread. Something terrible is happening, the worst is happening, a catastrophe, right? Following that thought, following those psychological effects, physical effects hit you, right? So these effects are basically your body going to a state of alarm. That is speeding heartbeat, sweating, shaking. You're going through terror, basically, right? The thing about panic attacks is that they're sudden, right? And it's very hard to expect them. They're usually unexpected. But they're not fatal. They will end, right? You can ride them out. So that is how a panic attack is different from a heart attack, right? So a heart attack will get worse with time, but a panic attack, it will end. Once your anxiety peaks and it starts to fall, you've ridden it out.
Like you beautifully mentioned of how panic attacks eventually die down, but a heart attack can be fatal if not taken action. So considering how similar the symptoms might be because of its intensity itself, people confuse heart attack for a panic attack. Right? So one more thing I also have observed or heard of from my clients especially is they feel like panic attacks can cause them harm or they can die of a panic attack. Like you mentioned, fatal can happen through a panic attack. How you mentioned that they are a result of anxiety, right? What exactly happens in a panic attack?
So in a panic attack, your body goes into a state of alarm. Something has triggered your stress response system. So your body is it is making you think that you're in some place where something bad is happening and you have no way to escape. You're trapped, right? So your body goes into this alarm state where your heart is beating fast, putting blood into your muscles. Your body is shaking, getting ready for action. It's ready to fight or it's ready to flee, right? So fight or flight symptoms. Other things are maybe you start to sweat, you start to get breathless. Because you're holding on to your breath, you're not able to keep up with the demands that your body is making, so you're getting breathless. Overall, once all of these alarm symptoms occur, you don't have something to fight. You don't have something to flee from because there's no threat existing, right? So that is the problem with a panic attack. If you had a threat, you would be perfectly primed to flee from it based on this panic attack. But there is no threat.
Like you mentioned, there is no threat. A lot of people experience or get panic attacks before an exam or before giving an interview or even for that matter when they're expecting some results, right? So like you mentioned, there is no threat that can come out of writing an exam. The worst thing that can happen is you could fail, but there is no life-ending situation there, right? So how are few ways in which people can deal with panic attacks?
One thing that maybe an exam is not life-threatening, but that is a trigger.
Yes.
It is a cause, right, for the panic attack. So that is something, if you have recurrent panic attacks at that thing, you know that you are viewing exams as a threat. But you can't avoid them. You can't just avoid your exams. What you can do to cope with panic attacks is to know that they will end. You can cope with it, you can get through it. Yeah, once you remember that, the stress of, oh no, I'm going to die, that won't happen. Because you know you won't.
Yes.
It's a panic attack.
Yes.
That's one thing. Another thing that you can do to cope with the panic attack is grounding yourself. So, one way to ground yourself is the 3-3-3 technique. So this is, you notice 3 things you can see. You notice 3 things that you can touch, and then there are 3 body parts of yourself that you move. Right? For example, your leg, your arm, your head. Do this repeatedly until you feel like your symptoms are reducing. And before you know it, your symptoms are over. Panic attacks can last from around 5 minutes to 20 minutes. Sometimes it lasts longer than 20 minutes and maybe an hour. But it won't go beyond that.